like when kids like, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we live?
Are we there yet? Oh, here we go. Yes, we are.
Are we?
Woo!
We're live?
We are live.
We're not
now.
live for me. Oh, wait. No. Weird. For me, I don't. Oh, there we go. Okay, we're live. Excellent. Maybe. I'll trust it. I'll trust you that we're live because I didn't know we're live. Okay, cool. What do we have for people today, Drew?
We have a continuation from where we left off last time. So we're still taking a look at building out an application. And the application that we're building out is to gather a list, in our case, a specific list of fruits. We thought that would be a good one. And that's just going to be a list of my favorite fruits. Last time, we built it out such that we had one piece, one sort of vertical slice that touched every area of the stack. Oh yes, we did actually. So we had a way to view the data that we would store, and we had a way to store that data. So today we're going to, I guess, continue building out a way to input that data, and then start to see more of the pieces that we're putting and where they fit at which level of the stack.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna share my screen. Let me just share that. Which one of these? Is it this? No.
Looks like, yep.
It's this. Okay, good. Okay, so last time when we were doing this yesterday, what we did is we had this. So we made this main. And, we were creating the application that Drew wanted. He wanted to be able to store his list of fruits. Oh, yeah, I should start off. Like, what we did is we created just a file. This is our database, db.txt, db for database, short for database. We created this file. And in this file, we store a list of fruits, right? So if we come up with new fruits like watermelon, we would just put on a new line, right? I'm just going to remove that. So this is the list of fruits. This is what we're saying Drew's favorite fruits are. And what we did is we had this application, and I think maybe I'll run it just to kind of show what's going on. So hopefully everyone can see that. So I run it, and I have some code that, if it starts, it just writes hello world. And let's just try this out. So I'm up with the browser, and I was able to go to localhost port 8080, and this is just like the way where I'm running my code from. And let's make that bigger. And you see here, date, cherry, apple, banana. And if I go into that file again, I'm just going to kill this to go in there. You can see that date, cherry, apple, banana, right? It's in the same order, right? Now, before we did it, these were all in their own line. And what happened is that when we switched, like I'm just looking at the source now from this is coming from the server. When we switched to HTML, because it's now in HTML, it interprets the data differently. Even though these are on their own separate lines, because of the way HTML works, it doesn't, it interprets just a new line as it does a space, right? And it's not meaningful. You would have to use what's called a paragraph tag, a P tag, get to be on a separate line. The other way to do it, and maybe this is what we'll do, we could wrap this in a pre tag, PRE, and allows us to actually pay attention to those new lines, right? Okay, so let's
we could do it a bunch of different ways too. We could add breaks. We could add sort it as a list.
Yeah. So I want to do, the reason I want to do a pre tag for now, not long term, but the reason I want to do it for now, because it doesn't require us to parse, to like read, actually, look at the structure of the file that the data's in, and pull things out and put them into say an unordered list or something like that. We would want to do that long term, and like we'll probably do that at some point. But I just want to focus on the form, creating that HTML form, so that we can do an HTTP post and that we can add new things to this file, right? And that's the thing to focus on. So let's do that. So I'm going to go into the code, and hopefully everyone can see all that. And if you remember, like what we did before is we had this serve HTTP method, and this is where it hits.
It's a little hard to see just because it's kind of too big, and it's it doesn't wrap.
Does that help?
I think it does.
Okay. Hopefully everyone can read that. So we have this, and when it hits this thing, what we're doing is we're doing some routing based on the method, and this is the HTTP method. It could be get, post, patch, puts, deletes. It could be stuff we make up like punch, kick, run, scream. But we're handling get, and then if it's not a get, it's not a get. It goes to this default case, and it just does, this error handling. Okay. So when we were doing this yesterday, we see here we have the code where we get the stuff from the database. We handle this error with this error code here. And then we create this buffer, right? So what we do is all the HTML we want to create, we put it to this buffer first, and then we send that over the network to the web browser. So we have a bunch of code. Let me just jump to the part. Okay, here it is. Here's the W represents that network connection that sends it to the web browser. And you see buffer, and I'm just getting the data from it and writing it. And of course, we handle the errors. And then here, like from this part here, all the way down to this part here, like I guess I can maybe highlight all that. Like this is where we're writing stuff to the buffer, right? And we start off and we're making it an HTML document. So you can see like there's the HTML tag, there's the body tag, and then down here we end the body tag and we end the HTML tag, right? And where is it? And here is where we write the fruits. Now we're kind of just like dumping the file. So what I want to do now is I want to add a little more code where I do write string. And I'm just going to put a pre-tag in there.
Is there any reason that you're doing that as an additional write, as opposed to just?
No, I just figured it'd make it easier. Just when I add other stuff too, like kind of like one piece per tag. Even though I didn't do that like up here, but I'm trying to make it a bit easier. But like one thing you also notice is as we're doing this, this is a bit more complex. Like it's getting kind of messy in this code, right? Like we have all this HTML mixed with our code logic and like playing with files and all that stuff. And this is where you start to see why you would want to, have the V and MVC. Like why would you separate out the view? So we're going to get to that in a bit. But for now, we'll just kind of like just work through this a bit more. And then after we've kind of set that up, we're going to separate it out. Okay. So I've added that pre, and that should preserve those like character terms, those new lines, so we can see it. So let's run this.
It sort of becomes a trade-off too, though. I think like whether the view becomes messy or your code becomes messy.
Yeah. So I'm coming back here. So this is the source code. So I'll just refresh the source code. You see the pre gets in there, and if I look at the normal view, what I should see is okay. There we go. So when I do that, I get date, cherry, apple, banana. Fantastic. Okay. So I'm going to kill this. I'm going to go back to the main. And now what we want to do is we want to create a form. And the reason we want to create this form is so that we can, say, hey, I have this new favorite fruit. And we want to add that to that file, right? Okay. So let me just add that form. I'll do it here. And what I'll do is I'll do buffer, write string. And again, like this is getting messy. And you're gonna like beg for just moving it somewhere else. So if you notice, like normally, a lot of times you use strings, use the double quotes. I'm using the backticks. In Go, if you use the backticks, a string can extend past a single line, right?
So now then it's a string literal.
Yeah, it's a string load, exactly. So I'm going to put methods equals post, so post instead of get. An action, for now, I'm just going to do, it doesn't actually matter. Like our code actually handles all the paths, so I'm just going to put the root. And the root's just, the slash by itself. And then what I want is an input type equals, actually, I'm going to shift this over. This maybe isn't, I don't know the best way to write it, but this is just so people can read it. I just want people to read it.
Yep.
Type equals, I think, text, and then name equals fruit. So let's do that. And then what we do is input type equals submit. I think it's value. Value equals add fruit. I think that works. I haven't done HTML in a while. Okay, let's see what happens. So go run. Okay, and I can check the source code when I reload this. I can go, oh, look, okay, there's a form there. Excellent.
Oh, I think actually you had an interesting thing there where you're in your second input.
I missed the slash. Yeah, I should have actually added that. Good catch. I mean, like
or you shouldn't have the slash.
Well, I do it in kind of an XML-ish style.
Okay.
This makes it so that you could parse the code without having to know whether the tag has a beginning and end. It's just it's convention some use. I like it.
It's actually like this Google style guide recommends against it. Saying that void elements should not
Yeah. But you know what I think of,
okay.
like specifications and standards
Yeah.
and all that.
Well, so what I wonder
Yeah.
is like basically the way that what you've said is that it's done by a convention, and that would be for people writing sort of code that would parse that would now be able to maybe have an easier time.
Yep.
Whereas that's also kind of what Google's doing as a search engine. And if you want to optimize for that, I wonder if their recommendation is a good way to go.
Yeah, I mean, like, does it have an effect on SEO? I mean, I think that's
Yeah,
the only time I'd
that's
really care about that. I don't know.
exactly.
But I mean, they can recommend it. I just don't care, to be honest. Like, unless it
Mhm.
affects me in some material way, I don't care.
Right.
I personally value being able to parse it easier. Okay,
Mhm.
so
Fair
I've
enough.
run that. You can see like the forms in here. So let's see what happens like when I refresh this one. So this is the actual view of it.
Mhm.
And oh, there's a fruit. Excellent. So what happens? What happens if I just like type something in? So what's another favorite fruit of yours, Drew? What do you like?
For me, oranges or tangerines.
Tangerine. Is that how you spell it? I'll
Yep.
assume so.
Yeah.
Add fruit. Method not allowed. Interesting, right? So that's actually what we expect. We did expect method not allowed. And why did we expect that? Because here,
because we don't handle posts.
Right, exactly. Here, what we have is we have get, and then we come down here. It's like it's not handling it, right? We hit the default and says method not allowed.
Yeah, we don't have a case for it.
Right. So what we can do is we can add a post, right? We can handle a post and see what happens. So let's for now, we'll just do something simple.
We'll print out hello from post or something.
Yeah. Hello from post. Okay. And that's okay. So we'll do that.
Don't need to return.
No. So that was kind of like maybe or maybe not. I'll just leave it for now.
Right.
And then that should stay the same. Let me just go back. Yeah. So we have the form. So you said tangerine.
Targerine.
Oh, yeah, thanks.
It doesn't really matter.
Tangerine. Okay. Add fruit.
Yep.
Hello from post. Excellent. It's working.
So now we have a handler for this, something that can handle this method when we post.
Yeah. So now what we want to do, now we have this kind of like, this framework that we just set up. Now we have this structure set up. What we can do is we can do what we wanted to do. We can get the fruit. So first thing we need to do is like get that fruit. It's coming to us somehow. Like in the code, we didn't get access to that fruit. When you get access to that fruit, know what it is. And then after we get it, we need to put in that file, right? And maybe return something sensible. So first step, let's get that fruit. Okay. So we're going to kill that. We'll go to main. We'll find that post. Here's the post. Excellent. There's the post. Okay. So we want to get that fruit. How do we get the fruit? Okay. So let's go to the docs. Let's take a look. What does it tell us? Okay. So I'm in the Go has a package HTTP, and it has a request. Or actually, let me do this. Type handler. So in handler, and that's the thing we're calling, it has a single method, and that's what we've kind of defined, the serve HTTP. It has two inputs. It has, the first one's response writer. That's our network connection, right, to the browser. And that's how we send stuff to the browser. And then we have request. And so this is what's been sent to us from the browser, right? And, for our post, they send us the fruit. So like I'd expect like it'd be somewhere in here. And we look at this docs, and here's the method that we're using already. And let's look through URL. Interesting. So protocols.
And that's actually, we already used exactly that method, right? We called that to get the string representation.
Yeah. So method is how we got the get, post, and all that stuff. I don't think we need URL yet. We don't need this. Just scrolling down, look for stuff. Header. No, that's not body. So I know that post puts stuff in the body, right? So we have this body. And I'll just kind of look through how it's got this other thing. Let's use this up here. Sorry, right here. We're gonna use body. And what is body? Body is an IO read closer. So let's click on that. And what is a read closer? What's a reader and a closer? So a reader is something where you can read stuff from. Fantastic. Okay. So if you think back, like we had that IO util thing that we got right here. And it has something from a read all. And it basically, like if you send it a reader, you'll get all the data, right? and we expect the fruit that we wanted to be contained in there, right? So let's combine these, let's compose these so we can get all this data. Okay, so the first thing, we want to get that body. Okay, so let's go to code, and we're here. So let's get rid of that. And what we want is we have request. That was what we called that second parameter, request. And we have body. Okay, great, we have this body. Now what do we do? We want to get the data. So we had IOUtil and we had read all. Okay, so we want to call read all on that. Oops, read all on this. So IOUtil dot read all. Okay, great. And it returns the byte string and an error. Okay. So, oops. Oh, wait, my laptop just froze. So
right.
as my laptop,
if not a byte string, a byte array.
Oh, right. Sorry, byte array. Yeah. So we'll just like wait for my my laptop not to be frozen. We're experiencing technical difficulty. Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
So what I'll do is for now we'll just call this. I think we just call this fruit, right?
Or fruits.
Well, no, it's not gonna be. You're gonna give us one. So we're like.
Oh yeah,
gonna,
that's actually kind of interesting. Yeah. Well, but it is it's a slice or an array.
Yeah. So we're gonna decide that what's like when you fill out that form, you can't enter more than one. You can only enter one. Right.
Okay.
And if you enter more than one, we're just gonna like we're not checking to see like if this is a real fruit, right? This is a pretty dumb back end. And what we'll do is we'll just do that. Okay. So I'm just getting that error. So I'm going now back to the code, the post, and I'm just gonna like handle the error the same way. So what am I doing? We go and we get the request body, right? So that's where that data is. Like if you remember, like when we did an HTTP post in a previous video, we showed actually like how this comes in as a request, right? And that's in like this Go struct. It puts that body of the request in this thing, this request.body, and we use this, the read all, to get the data from it. We want all the data from it, and we're going to put that in fruit, right? And it stores a byte array. I mean, it could be a string. We can convert it if we want, but it stores as a byte array. And if it works, it stores a byte array. If it doesn't, it returns an error. And if it returns an error, what we're going to do is we're going to like just use this built-in Go function HTTP error, and we're going to send internal server error to the browser, right? We have W here.
I can't see that, by the way.
Oh, sorry. I'll scroll over.
Scroll over.
Actually, maybe I'll hold it.
Or if you could make it up, make it higher up a little bit.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
There you go. Perfect.
So I just went to the new line. So you can see internal server error and then internal server error number. So we're going to return an internal server error if something bad happens in reading this, right? And I mean, like really, maybe I should have probably returned bad request, but I'm just going to leave it as like internal server error for now. Okay. So if we get the fruits, maybe what we can do for now is we'll just output the fruits to the user, right? So we'll do w.write fruit.
Yeah, it doesn't seem that would be an internal server error. Well maybe because
let's change it.
Okay.
And
the reason for that is because you're attempting to read from the body that you sent in, and if that fails, maybe let's think through like what would be a situation where that would fail.
Well,
like, what would cause that to fail?
The thing is, it can be. I think it's not clear why it's failing, right? Like, if it fails,
so it could be possible that it's like the IOUtil read all has an issue.
Maybe there's a bug in like the HTTP library in Go. Maybe there's a bug in IOUtil like read all, and it's causing this error. Like it's not clear to me that it's a problem with the web browser, the clients. Like it could be a program that's calling us. So let's just leave this. I think internal server is fine for now.
I think you're.
Okay, so we're just going to dump this. We just want to see if this works, right? Like we try to get the fruits. If it fails, it'll return an error. If it succeeds, we'll get a fruit. We're not sticking it in our database yet. We're not sticking in the file. We just want to see if this code works, because it's really good to see if this stuff works, because you don't want to.
We're writing it back to the browser.
Yeah. So that's what we expect. Okay. So we'll come back here. We'll reload this, and I'm going to stick tangerine. Hopefully, I spell it correctly. Excellent. Fruit equals tangerine. Okay, so that's interesting. I mean, we see a format here, right?
Yeah.
So in what's it called in HTML, and I guess like also HTTP, when you submit a form, it comes in a certain format. And let me just come here, and I'll show you some of that format. So for example, like we have fruit equals tangerine, but if we had more stuff, it would put an ampersand, and they might put like 1 equals apple 2 equals banana, 3 equals cherry. Like it's a bunch of key value pairs, kind of like JSON, right? But it's structured differently. Like in JSON, you would have, you know, oops, I can't spell today or yesterday. Tangerine, you know, etc. But in here, the way it's serialized, the way it's stored or like sent on the wire is different, right? So here we have like key value pairs. So the fruit is a name and then the value of is tangerine. It could be other stuff if you would have submitted the form differently. And then we separate things with an ampersand, right? Okay. So you might have seen this like in a URL, right? Like sometimes within a URL, I can't write it here. I'll write it over here. You might have, and then you might have,
so actually, like maybe we can just spend a moment to think about that, like the way that the key value pairs are stored, right? With the key on the left-hand side of the equals, and then the value on the right-hand side, and then the way that they're delimited by an ampersand. That was just something that somebody decided to do at some point and coded it in, and maybe it was, you know, somebody working with HTTP or whatever, and that just became the way. I don't know. Is that part of the protocol?
yeah, so this is a convention that was just made up at some point, right? So built into HTML and HTTP is this convention, right? So
yeah, so just like for us, the way that we were when we thought about, okay, how are we going to store our data in the file, we just decided that you know, one line for one word. But if we decided to separate each word by a comma or by a colon or an ampersand or whatever, or by a triple letter, for example, or anything, we could have done that, and then we could pretty easily parse it with some code.
Yeah, I mean, like you could have made another format, right? Like it could have been like, you know, I could do something like this, and then new line, and then like, you know, I guess 1 equals apple, or maybe I don't like the equal. Maybe I put colons here, right? Like, I mean, it could have been anything. It's just,
and oftentimes it seems that like the designer of these protocols, or the designer of these, you know, way of conventions that people tend to follow, regret their choices at times, because
sometimes
there's usually trade-offs.
Yeah. I mean, there's not always like a single good one. Like I think one thing that people kind of curse is let's just say is like this question mark, right? So you get question mark, then, you know, A equals B, C equals D, and then this comes as a unit, and then it's like, okay, separate that out. And if you just kind of like if you just say you wanted to add extra stuff on here, right? Like do you check? You'd have to see like what's there first, right? If I wanted to add more to the query, like I wanted to add like, you know, UTM whatever, I have to look, did it have a question mark already? If it does, then what I put here is an ampersand. If it doesn't, I start with a question mark, right? Anyways, like separate discussion. Okay, so we're going to parse that. Luckily, I know Go has some stuff that deals with this already. So I'm going to type in Golang URL, and I think we can use this. Let me see. URL. I think if we parse this, we'll get it back in the query. I think. So. Let's try this out, right? Let's see what happens. This is like I kind of remember doing this before, but I don't think I've done this in a while. So let's kill that. Let's bring this in our code. So it was net URL. I tend to like to put these in alphabetical order, so I'm going to have this in alphabetical order.
My editor does that for me.
Yeah, I do something that's a little different. Like if it's a foreign package, I usually put them above. So I guess it's not in alphabetical order anymore. But
I'm pretty sure you can set up Nano to do it as well, or some key command. But you could just run like GoFumped, I think.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to call this, right? So it's going to be URL.parse. Okay. So URL.parse, and it takes a string. Okay. So this is a bunch of bytes. So I'm just going to convert that in line. right? So you can see here, right? What I've done is this is a byte array, right? It's kind of like a string.
Can you make that?
Oh,
can you put that
sorry.
a little above because
Yep.
it's yeah.
Yeah, thanks. This is kind of like a byte array, and what I mean by byte array is, like that, right? It's a string-like thing, but it's mutable. You can change it, right? And what I'm doing here is I'm just kind of like converting into a string, right? And the reason is because parse takes a string, right? And I need to take a string. Okay, so I'm gonna send, actually, I guess I should call it not fruits because it has a whole bunch of stuff there. So I should call it something like body. Call it body. And I'll send that there. And then what does return? Returns a URL and returns an error. Okay. I guess I can't call this URL because I have a package named URL. Let's call href an error. Okay, and I'm just gonna do internal server error for now because I don't want to be specific or deal with that error properly. Okay, so we have this, and okay, let's see. How about this? Like we're gonna keep what we send to the browser the same, but we're gonna send whatever we get to the console, right? So I'm gonna say like href equals percent number v, and we'll just do href. And if that works, then we should see something in console. Okay, so let's see if that runs. And I don't have any errors. I might have some errors. I do have some errors. 78. Right, fruit. So I need to send body because I changed the variable name and I forgot to update that. So, okay, cool. And I run this and it's running excellent. So let's come back here and we're going to reload this page. And Drew's really wanting to get tangerine into this list. So we're going to do that. And I hit enter. Okay, so fruit equals tangerine. That's what we expect. Let's look at the console, see what's there. Okay, cool. So we sent that there and no, okay, so I see what the problem is. So I did this in a way that's not ideal. Let me check something. I'm just going to check something. So this sometimes happens when you're programming. I wonder if this has something where I can deal with that. Did it have query? Oh, here it is. Hey, look at this. It has a bunch of URL values. And how do I get that to work? Does it just work automatically? No, actually, that would probably be in the response. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tweak the URL a bit, and maybe that'll do it. So let me do this, and this is a hack. And you know what's going to happen? Like after we record this video, I'm going to like think, oh, I should have done this the other way. But I'm just going to do it this way for now. This is not how you should do it. But this is just a hack just to move us forward. So all I did is I put like a made up URL and a question mark, and it should interpret this now. Instead of a path, it should interpret as like a query at the end of the string. So, oops, 70, what was the problem? Oh, I should do this, plus. I need to concatenate a string. That's not like the best way to concatenate a string, but it's okay. So I come here, I refresh, again, tangerine, and it outputted it, and where is it? Here, raw query. Okay, so I think that's good. So now what I want to do is I want to go there. I've got this, and let's look to see like what can I do with this. So I have, where was the docs? I was in this, and I have, and this returns a URL. And I go to URL. Oops, I don't want to go there. Let me type URL. Okay, and let's see if I can look up fruit somehow. Query values. So I can type. Okay, so that means I can come here and I can go href dot query, and then I get a bunch of values, and then values. Okay, that's what it looks like. But how does it look at the top? Type values. Okay, and then I can get. Okay, I can get this. I can use this. I can use the get method, right? So then I can go get. Oops, get dot get, and then we called it fruit, so I can just get fruit, and I think that'll get the fruit. So let's give that a try. I think we'll get rid of this. Actually, no, we'll do this. I'll just do fruit set to here. Why do I keep on writing that wrong? And then I'll do %q. And then what we expect is we expect this to go to the console, like when I do this. Okay, so assuming I don't have an error, we'll do go run. No error, fantastic. And now we'll go back to the browser and I'll refresh and I'll write tangerine again. And I'm getting really good at spelling tangerine.
You really are.
Okay, so we have that, and let's see. Fruit equals tangerine, fantastic. Okay, so we've written some code, kind of fumbled through it a bit because I didn't have it. I didn't know it off the top of my head, and we're able to get the fruit. So now that we're able to get the fruit, what we want to do? We want to put that. Oh, go ahead.
Do you want to keep going on that tangent, or do we want to stop for a moment and go back over what we did? Because I kind of feel like we glossed over a few things that might deserve some attention. We can come back to them after if you prefer.
No, that's cool. Okay, so what do you want to focus on?
Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit about what is a URL.
Oh, good question. Okay, a URL in a sense is a way of pointing at something, right? And URLs, like you might be familiar with stuff like this. Let me make that a bit smaller. Is that legible? If I'm, it's pretty long.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. I mean, you can actually make that. That's about as. Yeah, that's actually pretty good.
Okay. So we have this URL, right? This is a URL. There's different types, right? Like, I guess technically we should be calling these maybe URIs. You have HTTP, you have FTP, something.
And I think that you don't really even need to specify the protocol anymore.
Sometimes. So if, say for example, you're in an HTML page in a browser, if you were to write something like this, for example, I'll just write it here. If you were to write something like this is a relative protocol.
So it'll choose whether it's HTTPS or HTTP.
Yeah, basically it's a good way. Like if you don't know if your web page is going to come over HTTP or HTTPS, this is a good way of like just making it work in both codes. You don't have to like change the HTML.
Right.
So that's a relative scheme. You can also do like relative domains. Like if you remove this part, like then it's like on the domain you're at using the protocol you have. Sorry, this is an absolute path. And then, you also might have something like, instead of this, you could have.
Sorry. You said this is an absolute path, but that's a relative path, isn't it?
So this one was an absolute path because I have the beginning slash.
Yes.
Right. So like.
So now you're at a relative path that's relative to the to whatever the domain is.
The computed path relative. Like if this is where you're at this page and you write this like right here, then what that equals is, okay, so you're going to take this, because there's no slash at the end, this is a file, you remove this, put that there, right? So this is path, this is common in places like Unix and Linux, and there was DOS versions of this. The path, that style comes from those type of things. And then the domains, you can think of this equaling a computer roughly. I mean, it's not true really anymore, but roughly it equals a computer. And then how you talk to it or what program you run on that computer, you can think of this scheme here, right? And then
and then the path from the entry point into that computer to what you're looking for.
Yeah, so this is like on this, you can think of it like this. On this computer, you kind of run this program, and this program understands paths. So hey, do something with this file, like give me this file. And then sometimes these programs, you can send it like parameters, like if you've ever used the console, like like ALF, and then this way you use the question mark, right? You do like whatever. So that's kind of like where this comes from. Like, I mean, like,
and so that's why when we go back to the code and you look at the function that you were using to parse, rather than just looking for what somebody might be more familiar with, just looking for a body, you were looking to parse the URL for that body.
Yeah. So what happened is that like you can send commands to this, a query, like what they call a query. Let me just shorten this because this is really long, so people can see this. I'm going to bring that down to E. So I can write stuff like fruit equals banana, and then message equals hello, right? And this format, like you notice, it's like fruit equals then ampersand, all that. This is the same thing. This is the same format you get when you do a post by default. There's ways of changing it, but by default you get that kind of format. And because it's the same format, I knew that if I used the code to handle like parsing URLs, I could handle the post body. And that was kind of the trick. And that's just like, previous experience with this stuff. That isn't, it wouldn't be obvious to someone who's never done that. There might be a way in the HTTP package to kind of deal with this a little easier.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't remember it off the top of my head, so I didn't use it. Like a lot of times, like nowadays, people don't always use this format. I actually like this format, and I think it's a good idea to make APIs. Like, so if you're not dumping HTML to the user, maybe you have an API style and you have JSON that you're returning or XML. You might also send JSON XML. So I've kind of forgot about like how to set that up and go, but I kind of like remembered you could do it this way. Okay. Do you want to go over anything else in this, or?
That was sort of the big one, and then maybe let's just step back through that. So we had the URL.parse. So that's where you're parsing. You just passed in a URL and then these URL params, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, like when I did it initially, when it was just like when I just wrote, actually, it would have been just this, right? You just send it that. Like it thinks this is the path, like from here, and it doesn't parse it properly, right? And what I needed to like have it after the question mark, right? And it might have been I could just stick a question mark in front, like that might actually work. But what I did is I made it like a fake URL, and I didn't care about the URL, right? So I put, HTTP example.com. I think that's what I put.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I did this.
And then if we go, you have string body. Let's go back to that. And that was just you were like coercing body into a string, and that was because body was it was an array, a byte array.
Right. So like this represents the request, right? So before we saw when we were doing the telnet tricks, like how to write an HTTP request, right? And that's what your web browser sends. But like other things, like things that use an HTTP API, or like yourself, you can use it. And Go reads that all in, and it kind of separates all the pieces out, right? It separates the method, the version, the body, the headers to separate parts to make it easier for you to work with. So the body it puts in this, right? Like request.body. And I wanted to get all that data, right? Because it's not as a string or a byte array yet. So I said, okay, like IORETAIL read all, give me all that data. So I got that in body, and this is a byte array. But one challenge though is that parse doesn't work with byte arrays. It works with strings. Like, okay, well I can deal with that, right? I just cast it. I put, I take the body and I just say like, string, and I put it around there, and it just converts the byte array to a string, right? And I was able to use it. Yeah, so that's why I did that. It was basically because
and then you said href because URL was the name of the library.
I would have liked to call this. I would have liked to call this URL, but like URL is being used by the package. I actually don't like it when they do stuff like that. I think they probably should have called the package something else, because like URL is something you commonly would want to use as a variable name. But either way, like I got around it like that. Yeah, so then I did that, and then I just wanted the query part. So, we looked at the docs, right? And we found that href.query gives me the query part. So that's everything after the question mark, not including a hash reference. And then like I could use it as a map, like a Go map, but they also have this handy function get, right? So it's like get fruit and give me the fruit. And we know it's fruit because like we called it fruit, right? Like when we had the HTML, here, we call the fruit name equals fruit. And we can see that in the code. We look at the code. You can see like, here's the inputs, right? And here's name equals fruit. So that's why we're looking for fruit.
And so that fruit there, it becomes the key for that input. And then whatever you put in as the value is the value to that key.
Yep. So if we had something else here, right? If we called this, I don't know, goat, we'd have to look up goat. If we had more than one of these fields, or these like input tags, we can look up each of them, right? Or we could ignore them. Like we don't actually have to pay attention to them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anything else you think we should dig into a bit?
I think that was pretty good, actually. I think that, yeah, that explains what we just did. The reason is because I think sometimes what happens when we're explaining things and we just want to get through it, and sometimes maybe lose track for a second, or we just want to try something out to see if it works, we go a little bit quickly and gloss over some things just to
Yeah,
make
no,
sure we get to the point that we wanted to get to. So now we've stepped back through that. We have an idea of what a URL is and why that's significant, why we could use the URL params to get the body of the post request, and to step through there and say, oh, here's the fruit, which is that that key that we passed in when we submitted that form. It was one of the inputs that we defined that the name equals fruit, so that's the key, and we get the value from that form that way.
yeah, no, I think it's good. Like sometimes when you're programming, you kind of like just power through it, and it's not obvious just how much you just glazed over. So I think that was fantastic to do that. Okay, so so we have the fruit now. We have access to the fruit, and what we want to do is put that in the file, right? And what I'm gonna just put a message here. So I'm gonna stop doing this here, and I'm gonna send to the browser. So I'm gonna change this to fprintf instead of printf. I'm gonna say added. Oh, how about this? I'll just put added fruits. Added the fruit as new favorites fruit. And I keep on misspelling fruit. Added blah as new favorite fruit. Okay, I think that should be okay, but I need to add it in there, right? So how do I add stuff to this? Okay, let's go some docs. So I think in Go there's a.
So you need to add it to what?
I need to add to the file, right? So I have this message, I added the fruit, but I want to see.
So you have to actually write it to the file, right?
Yeah. So how do I do that? So there's an OS package. Maybe there's something here I can use. So what I want to do is I want to append, open file append. That looks complex. I can do it that way. Like usually, go back there.
Well, if we look at how did we read from it? How did we initially get the data?
We did the read all. We did the read all.
And that was from the same package, or was that from IOUtil?
It was from IOUtil. So we can check IOUtil again. Let's see what's in here.
I think Go actually between IOUtil and IO and maybe one other place, we have about 3 different ways we could write, depending on sort of which level of abstraction we want to use.
Let's just write a whole file. I mean, that's one approach we do. We just write the whole file. Another approach is
as opposed to appending. Just write the whole file.
Appending, I think, would be a better way to do it. I think often in a lot of operating systems, an append is an atomic operation, right? So if we had, like you were like really like eager and you had like 5 computers open, you're like adding, 5 fruits at the same time. It wouldn't screw it up, right?
But because whichever one went in at whatever time, the only difference would maybe be the order, if that mattered. Yeah. But they'd all still be added, as opposed to sort of truncating everything, and then you may end up with some strange results, and you might lose something.
Okay, so let's just do what it's doing here. It wants to append it, so let's append it. Okay, so we're gonna kind of copy and paste this code, and I'll just call it file. And it's not access log; it's db.text. But like we now have a couple places called db.text. So maybe what we need to do is, I'm going to create a constant. DB.
Would we? Okay, I guess we could. Yeah.
File name.
I was going to say maybe we could finish off the thought and then come back and clean it up later, but that's fine. If you prefer doing it as soon as you see it, then that's fine.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of like how I code.
Yeah, well, it's probably like you already know this is going to happen, so.
Yeah. Okay, so we have that, and maybe I'll just move this to the next line to make it easier to read. So there's a bunch of stuff here. Okay, we'll do it like that for now. Not the neatest, but I hope that fits on the screen a little better. So opening this file, and then if there's an error, so I'm just going to do again internal server error. We'd probably want to think more carefully about these errors, but it's not our focus right now. And then, okay, what happens? Let's look at this code. Well, we're going to write some stuff. Okay. And I guess like also we want to close this. So defer file.close. Maybe I should call this DB instead. I'll call it DB stuff. DB.close. And okay, so how does it write? So it does something like this. Okay, so I think if we want to write a string, is it a string? No, actually it's
Slice
not
of
a string.
bytes.
Yeah, I think it'll be okay because we can. This is an IO writer. So I think we can just use this, right? So we can do db.write, and we want to write. Actually, we need. I can't do that. Okay, so I'm gonna do something else. io.write string. The reason is because I need to put a carriage return, right? So I'm gonna do. So we need to do what we write to the database, and then we want to write the fruit, and then carriage return. I think it's just a single carriage return should be okay. And IO write string, let's just find that. Write string. Write string, it returns the number of bytes written and errors. So we're going to ignore the number of bytes written. We're going to get that error, and I don't need to put a colon equals. Did I put a colon equals? Oh, that one's okay. And then we'll just, it's internal server error if it doesn't work. Okay, so what I've done, just cover this. So if there's a post, right? If we fill out that, sorry, motorcycle going by. If it fills out that form and we post it to add a new fruit, the fruit comes in the body, right? So is that fruit equals tangerine in our case, and it's in here, so we need to get it out somehow. So we call this read all. It puts it in the body, and it's a byte array, it's a type of string. And then what we do is we want to pull the data out of there. We want the actual fruit name. We use parse to do that, and it comes into this. And then what happens is that we say, okay, sorry. I live by a place where there's lots of sirens.
No, it's great. It's actually a sound that I've come to greatly enjoy while talking with you.
Yeah. For what it's worth, very, very likely moving. And this should be dealt with soon. Anyways, so
Nice.
I take that, I get the query part, right? Which is like, that structure where it has like, name equals value, ampersand name equals value. And then I say, okay, well, give me the one that has fruit. Give me the value of that. And I get fruit. And then what we do is once we have that is we open...
So this is actually interesting because the get here, does that not return an error? Like what would happen if fruit didn't exist?
Empty string.
Oh, just an empty string, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually, I think it's the way this was originally architected. You can't tell the difference between like fruit equals and it's actually an empty string versus it never sent me a fruit, right?
Right.
So
yeah.
that I think is a poor design. They may have fixed that actually, but let's not focus on that for now.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, but I agree. This is like actually a bad design for this function, but it makes it easy to use. Anyways. So
and then this part's kind of interesting too.
And we kind of copied and pasted this. Yeah, we copied and pasted this. We open the file, and the key is what we want to do is we want to append. And what does append mean? Appending means we add it to the end of the file, right? And like, there's actually a bit of magic that happens by the operating system, right? So by whether you're running Windows or Mac OS or Linux or whatever, often an append, it happens all at once. Right? So let's say a whole bunch of people are trying to add fruits, right? What could happen, like let's say we read in the whole file, then we add it to the end. If you do that and someone adds a fruit, well, you might have read it before, like you read, they read, and then they wrote, but then you wrote again and their fruit's no longer there. So you like clobbered the results, right? Or maybe you start writing a bit, like you start writing TAN, and then like their fruit comes in, maybe it's avocado. So the AV, and then like, what is this, right? So we want it so that it happens all at once, right? And I don't know, I haven't confirmed it, but like, at least on the computer I'm running, but usually from what I remember, append happens all at once. So we should be safe with this, right? And this code, we largely copied and pasted, we kind of tweaked it. And we opened it, and like whenever you open the file, close it.
One of
sorry,
the
go ahead.
things to mention here is that like it's os dot o underscore append, that this probably, I mean, we could maybe step through the code, maybe not today, but some other time, and look at it. But there's likely some sort of adapter for, depending on the operating system that you're running this code on, how that's going to actually work, such that it will ensure that it appends whether you're on a Unix system, Windows, whatever.
Yeah, I think for Linux, Unix, and Mac OS, Mac OS is, I think, based on FreeBSD. At least I kind of remember it being. They have just built-in stuff that directly maps to this. Windows, I think you have to. There's either like you have to like translate to what they use, or they might have some functions like this. But yeah, I mean, this one, like, at least is a pretty natural mapping if you have like a Linux or Unix like operating system. Okay. So we have this, we open the file. This is our database. And, just for housekeeping, we should close. And Go has this nice thing that set defer. And what that means is that, hey, whenever this finishes, do this thing, right? You don't have to do it now, but I'm telling you, do it at that time, which I think fantastic, because it lets me put it near the open, and I don't have to go into all the error handlings and make sure I close and stuff like that. I really love the defer and Go. That's an awesome thing. Okay, so we have that, and then what we do is we try to write to that file, and we call it DB, the database, and we take the fruit. So this is going to be what we got before. In your case, it'll be tangerine or avocado or whatever it is. But we want to put on a line of its own. So we're going to stick a carriage return at the end, right? And we just do some error checking. If it fails, it does that. And then we just output to the user this, added, queues new fruit. Okay, let me just check if I added OS. I think I didn't add that. So I got to do that. Okay, so let's run this. Let's see what happens. Okay, oops. Okay, so let's go here. We'll just refresh this, and we'll type tangerine.
Now's the time that you really want to make sure it's spelled correctly.
Yeah. Added tangerine as a new favorite. Let's see if it actually works, right? So it gives a message. That's fantastic.
Yeah. So there's two ways right now we should be able to see whether it worked or not. One would be to look at the file. The other would be to go back to the other page and do a GET request.
Oh, look at this. It's actually here. So let's actually look at the file too, right? Yeah. Oops.
DB.
Yeah. There's tangerine. Excellent. Let's try it again. Let's see what happens, right? What other fruit you like? Orange. I should start the program. let me start the program. Okay, there we go. Orange. Add fruits. Added orange as new favorite fruits. I see orange. Orange. Very, very cool. Okay. So so now we got that working. Okay. So now let's kind of look at, you look at this code. We got a lot of HTML here. This is kind of complex, right? And I find it actually difficult to have all this HTML encoded here. To me, it's really messy, right? I don't like it in here. And I think if, for example,
well, maybe maybe we can actually pick that up tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah, and maybe we can just kind of do an overview of what we worked on today to get an idea that, yesterday or last time we had a file, and we were able to read from that file and then pass that to an HTML view so that you could see the words.
Yeah.
Today, we looked at that. We formatted it a little bit differently so that it now looks like a list separated by lines. And we also added a form with an input where we can put in we can add a fruit. We can submit that. That gets sent to the application, which then says, okay, here's this fruit. I'm going to take the fruit from this request. I'm going to add that and write it to the file.
Yep. Yeah. So we have the database file, and we made up a format. We created a text file. Each fruit is on its own line, right? So that was just like an arbitrary choice by us.
Mm-hmm.
And then what we did is we first we made it so we can see what's in the file, right? So if you just go to the web server we have, right, it'll just give you those whatever's in the file, right? And it does that if you send it a GET request, which is what you get if you just type in a URL or click a link. You do a GET request, HTTP GET. And then we wanted to make it so we can add stuff to the file. So we created an HTML form that it also outputs with the list of fruits. And you can put in a fruit name. And if you submit the form, it does an HTTP post. And then what happens is that our code notices it's an HTTP post and not a GET. And it looks for the fruits. And then it takes that fruit and it sticks in the file. Right? So we have a way of seeing what favorite fruits we have, and we have a way of adding new fruits. We don't have a way of, say we typed something wrong like I was doing. We don't have a way of editing stuff. We don't have a way of deleting stuff, right? But we have like the basics. This is like a minimal viable product, right? For all those people in the world who want to have a list of fruit somewhere, like there you go. And that's pretty cool.
All those people. Yeah. I'm sure that this is going to be the next viral app.
Yeah. But it also, like, we've started in the progress. We've created this application, and we're starting to get a feel for like why use MVC, right? Like you don't just use it because like other people are using it, right? I mean, sometimes people do, but
well, I think it's also like you're doing a thing, and you're going to do that thing again with maybe a different application, and again with another application. You do a thing enough times, you start to see a pattern. And if you look at how other people did that thing, well, guess what? A lot of them followed something that looks like a similar pattern. They solved that problem the same way that you solved that problem, the same way that other people solved that problem. And then you say, oh, well, let's give this thing a name. Let's talk about what it is. So now we have an easier way to reference it than to describe it in detail every time.
And for me, like what I'm feeling right now is that HTML code mixed with all that other logic of like, dealing with it, whether it's a GET, whether it's a post, whether like accessing the database file, putting stuff in there is not, I don't like it like that. It's too messy.
Yeah. Well, I can think already, like right now, there's a few things that we would maybe think about. One would be, like almost everything is a little bit too messy, right? Like we can think we're writing to a data store, we're reading from a data store. Do we really need all of the ways to do that rather than a simple call and the error handling right there?
Think for example, if I wanted to write unit test around this, right? Like I want to like make sure my code works. Like for example, like the stuff where I stick new things in the file, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's mixed in with all the stuff that outputs and handle HTTP and all that. Like to be able to test this, to make it so I can make tests for myself, just to make it so that like, me 8 months from now, when I forget what I did before and I want to make sure like any change I do doesn't break it, like I have some tests. And to do that, like I need to separate some of this out, right? Just to make that usable. Like, so maybe eventually, this is like extra from MVC. Like maybe I separate out the stuff that, deals with the database, right? So I'd have some kind of struct that I'd create. And maybe like, when I initialize it, I send it the file name, and I have a method where I can just add stuff to the database. Like I don't have to like write all that code for opening the file and all that. It's like right away. I just like, I call a method, right? And it handles that all internally. It's well tested, and I don't have to mix it in with all this other stuff.
It sounds like you're inside somebody's right ear.
Sorry, what?
It sounds like you're inside somebody's right ear, figurine guy.
Oh, sorry. It might. So I had someone tell me was that for some reason my audio on Twitch just goes to the right headphone, and I don't know why. And when I record it locally, it doesn't do that.
That's very interesting because. Same for me. I don't hear it like that either. I think it may have something to do with maybe some configuration setting on whatever you're using to stream to Twitch.
Yeah, it's quite possible. I don't know why it's doing it though.
I wonder if there's like a stereo or mono or
I don't know.
Like
I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out. I was trying the other day to figure it out, but I don't know yet. I think I'm going to change a lot of things. Like one thing that'd be nice, I think, for us is when we show code that takes up most of the screen. Like right now, it's just kind of like replacing most of my screen. But if
you can, you can actually, you don't have to show yourself while you show the code either. And or maybe even me sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking like we could be in like little squares, and then the
Mhm.
code would take up most of the screen, and that would probably make it easier for a lot of people to read this stuff.
Yeah, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Anyway, I think we did a pretty good job of covering what we
Yeah.
set out to do today. Tomorrow we can talk a little bit about cleaning that up,
Yeah.
and then also talk probably a little bit more about what's going to happen if we want to edit one of the words, and would that mean, because we I think something that we talked about today was interesting, was the append, and how if you have multiple sources appending at the same time, then that's not going to mess up the data. But if we're truncating the data, we're just overwriting everything, then that could. Um, but what's going to happen now when we want to edit just one of those things? In this case, are we going to have to truncate, or are we going to be able to edit a word in place in a file?
Yeah. Yeah. We'll get to that.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, and then there's quite a few other things as well, like cleaning up maybe the including the HTML stuff that's inside our functions, and also whether we read and write all in the same place and handle all of the errors there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yep.
Okay. I'll see you tomorrow, Drew.
Okay, sounds great.
Okay. To everyone watching, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.